war. It want to get out of the war in a high. It want to prove that they have been very successful, and they want to come out of it, because if this war prolonged, then it is going to affect adversely not only the world but also the economy of US. There is inflation, unemployment which is increasing. So that's the thing. But the Israel has a different view. Israel feels this is the right time to ensure that Iran fighting capability is reduced to zero. The missiles are almost neutralized. Their manufacturing capability, their storage facility are also being neutralized. And also what they are doing is energy sector. The energy sector of Iran is being also now being addressed. And therefore, what Israel feeling it that this is the right time to ensure that Iran is capacitated in a manner that it will not able to come up in next 10 years. And that's what is where the difference is there between
Yes,
US and Israel. Israel wants
yes.
the war to prolong. I think US want to now come out of it, because US is feeling it that they are losing much more than they can gain in future.
Yes. Thank you for highlighting that, Major General Sivachi. Please do stay with us as we come back to you. Now, moving on to Iran, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has stated that Iran is unlikely to resume negotiations with the United States amid escalating hostilities in the Middle East. He has described past talks as a bitter experience and said recent U.S. actions have undermined the diplomatic process, making future dialogue with Washington unlikely. Iran blames the United States and Israel for rising regional instability, noting that attacks against Iran have disrupted oil production and transport. Tehran frames its military actions as self-defense and insists it is not responsible for the broader consequences affecting the region and the international community. Simultaneously, Iran's deputy foreign minister says the first condition for any ceasefire is that no further attacks are launched. Now we welcome back retired Major General A.K. Sivachi. He joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for staying with us. Now, looking at this situation, why do you think U.S. or other countries might expect them to come back to negotiating table? How will the trust be mended, since this attack was planned during the negotiations and as they were approaching the fourth round of negotiations?
I agree with you. You know, there is a distrust and the lack of total trust between US and also Iran and Israel, because the negotiations were going on. And it same thing happened last time when 12 days war took place. The negotiation was in progress, and that is time in middle of the negotiation, Israel attacked. And also the American attack on the nuclear facility of Iran in Natanz, Fordo, and Ifsan. This time again, when the talks were going on, they have attacked. But all said and done, Iran is also feeling the heat of the war. They are also feeling vulnerable for three, four reasons. One is they do not have an unending, stockpile of missile, rocket, and drone. The second thing is they are fighting alone. There's not much help coming from any other country, including Russia and China. Russia is involved in Ukraine war, whereas China is focusing toward Taiwan. So therefore, thinking that Iran can fight an unending war, that may also not there. So there are back channel diplomacy going on, and there is a school of thought that they also want a peace, and China is involved, Russia may get involved. So there are a number of other countries getting involved to end this war. But Iran also feels that whatever it may be, it can't fight an unending war, and that's why possibly it may agree on this issue. The other issue is the economy of Iran is also shattered completely. You know, there are economic sanctions, and the way their infrastructure, logistic system, their energy sector has been neutralized. Their nuclear facility also has been to some extent damaged. So they will possibly will like to have it, and the new leadership will come, Mustafa Khamenei. He is also not a very popular leader. There was a tussle which
Yes.
was there to select him as a supreme leader. IRGC has pushed away. Otherwise, there were a lot of voices which were against him being elected supreme leader, because America has told very clearly that any supreme leader elected by the US, by the Iran, is not going to
Yes.
survive until unless it has a
Um,
tacit approval of US. So I
yes.
suppose, considering all the situation, Iran also feel if there can be negotiation, it is better because they are also feeling the heat of this war. They will not able to fight unending war because
Major,
the stockpile is limited.
thank you very much, Major General Siwachi, for sharing that insight with us on News X World. I'd like to also bring in our other guest, Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's an independent China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for staying with us and joining us today. Now, looking at this situation that's escalating, how do you think, how long will this drag on? And also, do you think that if any country that could mediate between all these countries, could it be China by any chance?
I don't think that either China or Russia want to be directly involved in the kinetic conflict outside their own terrains, outside their own regions, because it's thousands of miles away. And secondly, both China and Russia do not want to be involved in the direct confrontation with the United States. Neither the United States also doesn't want to be in a kinetic war against Russia or China, because all the three are the world's largest nuclear armed nations. Um, but it doesn't mean that Russia and China are abandoning Iran. The fact that the Iranians have been able to mount such a coordinated, very effective, almost overwhelming counterattack is because for decades they have been honing their missile capabilities, as well as the supply of different armory or software or even hardware from Russia, and to a certain extent China, and also relying on China's navigation system, using the satellite navigation system to guide these missiles, and so I think that this is a war of attrition, definitely. As the previous guest pointed out, Iran is, of course, economy is have been suffering hugely, but I think that they have now elected this leader, and this leader, of course, is the son of the martyr, the Hamani, which is very a spiritual leader for decades. And then the Iranian people are rallying behind the government because this invasion of the United States, decapitating their leader, is galvanizing almost the whole country, even though amongst those people who do not necessarily ally themselves with the Khomeini regime. And I think that they're rallying behind his son as well, because it's a symbol, is a continuation of this religious, deeply religious ideology. So I think that there is a resolve there, but on the other hand, the capacity is not unlimited. But on the side of the Americans, again, they are constrained, even more constrained in terms of a time frame, because the midterm elections are coming up, and they just can't prolong the war until the evening before the midterm elections, because they've got to prepare for to galvanize the voters. So allowing at least about 3 or 4 months before then. So walking back from November, the maximum they can prolong this war is maybe in up until August at the very latest. But even that is pressing it too far, because there is a body of opposition, not only amongst the Democrats, but amongst the general public in the United States, who are suffering from rising oil prices at the gas station. And so this translates into a very dangerous threat to President Trump's hope to for his midterm elections results.
Yes.
But I also agree that Israel, of course, is determined to take advantage of this opportunity to finish Iran once and for all. And then they are capitalizing on their political stranglehold all over the American body politic. That's across the Nile. Even the Republicans or Democrats, they are hugely beholden to Jewish interests. The Jewish lobby in the United States is very, very strong. So we're seeing a tussle in politics within the United States between the Israeli lobby and also between the calculations of the Trump administration, bearing in mind the upcoming November midterm elections, and also rising energy prices, rising inflation, which of course would affect the stock market, which is a bad news for its election efforts as well. So I think that we are now seeing a game of chicken. But I agree that because of both sides are suffering from this pressure, so I think the war is unlikely to last for very long.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Long, for sharing that insight. Please do stay with us as we come back to you for our next news as well. Now, moving on to Iraq, preventive security steps are being taken by Iraq as tensions rise across the region. Federal troops have been deployed along Iraq's border with Iran in the Kurdish region of northern Iraq in an effort to prevent the frontier from turning into a new front line in the ongoing Middle East conflict. The deployment is aimed at tightening border security and preventing Iranian Kurdish opposition groups from launching cross-border operations into Iran. These groups are believed to be preparing for potential ground activity, raising concerns of further escalation. Meanwhile, heavy military movements have been reported on the Iranian side of the border. Units of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have been positioned in the area with missiles, radar systems, and other military assets reportedly deployed to target what Tehran describes as separatist bases. However, Baghdad is seeking to avoid being drawn directly into the widening conflict involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. Regardless, the border region remains tense as regional instability continues to grow. Now we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for staying with us. Now, how dangerous is this situation given in Iraq, and also knowing that Iraq has a lot of Kurdish, also Shia minorities, and also the proxies, some of course support Iran, some support Shiism, some support Kurdish people there. So how do you think Iraq is capable of making sure that they're not directly drawn into, if not yet?
Well, this we're talking about the Kurdish kind of insurgents. At one time, President Trump was trying to use the Kurdish insurgents from Iraq and also possibly even from Turkey to invade Iran with the hope of forces on the ground to change the calculations. However, on second thought, he's now walking back on that because how many of these insurgents are there? And Iran is a very, very big country with 90 million people. And then even though you're talking about 100,000 Turkish insurgents, it's not going to change the picture. Now, there was also very strong dynamics on the side of like Turkey. Turkey doesn't want the Turkish kind of forces to grow in momentum, to grow in strength. It wants to keep the Turkish forces under control. As far as Iraq is concerned, the thing is that Iraq doesn't want to enter into a war with Iran. As you pointed out, in Iraq itself, there are the Shiites, which have a considerable number of Shiites who sympathize with, who ally themselves with the interests of Iran. So I think that to prevent the Turkish insurgents from crossing the border into Iran, and therefore putting spanners in the works. And that's why Iraq is trying to fortify this border to prevent this from happening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for sharing that insight. Please do stay with us as we come back to you. Now, moving on to Taiwan, Taiwan's Air Force has said that an order for 4 advanced US-made MQ-9B Sky Guardian drones is on track and has not been affected by the ongoing war in the Middle East. The Air Force has added that the order for the drones made by General Atomics and designed for surveillance and target acquisition is proceeding according to schedule. The Air Force has also said that it expects delivery of the first 2 batches of MQ-9B Sky Guardian later this year. Now we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for staying with us. Now looking at this, is Taiwan undermining the delay, if there is any, although we haven't heard any reports of that, but how do you think, how will U.S. balance their commitment and expectations by countries like South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and many more, while effectively supporting its war efforts and Israel's defense in the Iran war?
Well, of course, the Iran war affects almost all countries around the world, either directly or indirectly through rising prices and energy scarcity. But I think the tendency to drag the question of the Taiwan question into every kind of turmoil, I think that there's some misreading of Beijing's intentions towards Taiwan. As I pointed out so many times on this panel, Beijing doesn't want to invade Taiwan unless that there is a direct declaration of independence. What Beijing wants is to get ready, meaning ready means overwhelmingly a deterrence by 2027, as mentioned by President Xi several times. But the mentioning of the date is not, repeat not, a day for action. It's a day for readiness, because the preference is still peaceful unification. Again, I've outlined so many times on this panel, through military deterrence, economic and diplomatic isolation, and people-to-people exchanges. And all these dynamics are happening. So if Beijing is confident of peaceful unification, why stirring the pot militarily? It doesn't make sense. So I think that this, plus the fact that, of course, the United States position on Taiwan is more nuanced, is underpinned by the Taiwan Relations Act, which was enacted many years ago, empowering the United States to continue to supply arms to Taiwan to defend itself. But it doesn't mean that the United States want Taiwan to declare independence. It wants to maintain the status quo, but trying to turn Taiwan into a military porcupine to deter any kind of aggression from Beijing. But that doesn't mean that Beijing is going to invade Taiwan anytime soon. And of course, both countries, the United States and China, are now, in fact, the whole world have been distracted by this Iran war. So I think that there was this Taiwan question is really a storm in a teacup, and it's beside the point.
With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Andrew K.P. Long for joining us as always and sharing that deep insight with us on the sex world. Thank you very much. Now we move on. A high-profile verdict has been delivered in New York in a closely watched sex trafficking trial. 3 wealthy brothers, Oren Alexander, Tal Alexander, and Alan Alexander, have been found guilty by a federal jury in Manhattan over allegations that women were lured to exclusive parties and sexually abused. The conviction follows a weeks-long trial in which 11 women testified that they were drugged and assaulted by one or more of the brothers. Prosecutors argued that the men used their wealth, luxury trips, and high-profile social circles to lure victims before isolating and assaulting them. However, defense lawyers had insisted the encounters were consensual, acknowledging and inappropriate behavior but denying any criminal conduct. Lawyers for Alan Alexander has said that the verdict will be appealed. Meanwhile, Oren and Tal Alexander were known as top luxury real estate brokers and co-founders of the brokerage firm Official, while Alan Alexander worked at a private security company. Furthermore, the brothers have been in custody since their arrest in December 2024, and the case has drawn widespread attention to allegations of abuse within elite social and business circles. Now we move on to Indonesia. Indonesian authorities say rescue operations have ended after a deadly landfill collapse that has killed 7 people. The accident happened at the Bantar Gebang landfill, which is the largest landfill in Indonesia. Officials say a massive pile of garbage suddenly gave way after days of heavy rain, burying people who were working at the site. Rescue teams searched through the waste for 2 days using excavators and thermal drones. Authorities say that 6 people survived the collapse and clarified that 2 people earlier reported missing had already returned home safely. More than 200 rescuers took part in this operation. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. Iran has fired a new wave of missiles towards Israel, triggering air raid sirens and forcing residents to seek shelter. The Israeli military says defense systems are intercepting the projectiles as the conflict enters its second week. Iran has carried out attacks on U.S. and allied targets across the Gulf, including Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. The expanding strikes signal a broader regional dimension to the war. Israeli strikes in Lebanon have pushed the death toll above 486 people. As fighting continues along the border, Israel and Hezbollah have exchanged fire for days as hostilities spread beyond Iran. Thousands of people have gathered in Tehran in support of new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei. The demonstrations followed his appointment after his father was killed in U.S.-Israeli strikes. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned Iran it will face a response 20 times harder if shipping is disrupted in the Strait of Hormuz. The narrow waterway is a critical global energy corridor for oil tankers. Global oil prices have fallen in early Asian trading after spiking to nearly $120 a barrel a day. Earlier, markets reacted after comments from President Trump suggested the conflict could end quickly. Britain says a drone that hit a military base in Cyprus last week likely originated from Lebanon or Iraq. The incident damaged a hangar and raised concerns about attacks on regional bases. 5 members of Iran's women's national football team have been granted humanitarian visas in Australia. The decision follows their elimination from the Asian Cup and comes amid safety concerns about returning home. And for this hour, we start with the breaking news coming in from Kuwait. Kuwait has said that its air defenses have intercepted multiple aerial threats. The country's National Guard has confirmed that 6 drones were shot down in the north and south of Kuwait. The announcement comes shortly after the Kuwaiti army reported another interception earlier on Monday. Officials said 2 ballistic missiles and 2 drones were destroyed inside of the country's airspace. Authorities have not yet revealed where the drones were launched from. However, the interceptions come amid rising regional tensions and growing security concerns across the Gulf. Now we move on. U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a stark warning to Iran. President Trump has criticized Iran's leadership succession, calling the choice of Mojtaba Khamenei a disappointment one. Mojtaba is widely seen as the likely successor to Iran's supreme leader. President Trump has also spoke about the ongoing U.S. military operation against Iran. He said once the operation is complete, Tehran will no longer have the capacity to threaten the United States. He has added that Iran would also lose the ability to target Israel or any American allies. According to President Trump, the goal is clear. When the campaign ends, Iran's weapons capability will be severely degraded for a long time.
Do you have to take him out? Does he have a target on his back?
You mean the new supreme leader? You mean the son?
How can there be in Iran?
Well, I don't
Ayatollah?
want to say that. Where they're not going to be starting the following day to develop a nuclear weapon. Where they'll look at that man and some other people from the administration and say, all right, we're not going to do it. They were not willing to say that. And when Steve called up and he said that to me, I said, well, here we go. Let's do it the hard way. But the hard way, I think, is probably the easy way. When basically I can see that they will no longer have any capacity whatsoever for a very long period of time of developing weaponry that could be used against the United States, Israel, or any of our allies. We have great allies in the Middle East, great countries that are allies.
Now we welcome Professor Rohan Gunratna. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us. Good to see you. As now we enter the second week of this war, how resilient has Iran been? How do you analyze this situation?
Asuma, we have seen two trends. One is Iran had a very significant missile capability. The number of missiles they have been firing every day has diminished very significantly from about 500 to 600 missiles a day into less than 100 a day now. Of course, Iran has a capacity to replenish their losses and their wastage because they still have their industries running. The drone capability also has diminished, but Iran currently has sufficient capacity to reproduce drones and to replace the capabilities that it has suffered. So this war, the intensity of the fighting by Iran, the Iranian capabilities has degraded, but still Iran will continue to attack, especially the countries in the Gulf. Now, with regard to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the main military security and intelligence entity, it's a very big entity of 850,000 personnel. They also have taken hits, but still it is a very strong entity. So we do not see a quick end to this war. It will continue for a significant period of time because no country is willing to put boots on the ground. So I believe that the Middle East will remain unstable in at least the coming weeks and coming months, although Iran's capacity to sustain its high-intensity campaign has diminished.
Talking about instability, one thing we notice is, the Strait of Hormuz and the effects of it in the oil market, in the energy sector. Do you think that if President Trump and Israel were planning this Operation Epic Fury for a long time, don't you think they should have had a strategy to protect Strait of Hormuz and the shipping that's that uses that strait?
As you mentioned, the Strait of Hormuz is the key waterway, the key passage from where a very significant percentage of oil and trade passes through. Right now, this strait's control has been taken over by the United States. US has sunk nearly 40 Iranian naval vessels that was seeking to block the Straits of Hormuz. So the Americans have achieved a very significant military achievement, but still the Strait of Hormuz is not safe enough for the free passage of vessels. The American vessels will have to escort the other commercial vessels, the commercial vessels that are moving back and forth. So in terms of the security of the Straits of Hormuz, it cannot be guaranteed by anyone because Iran has a very big naval capability. Israelis and Americans have targeted those capabilities, but still Iran is able, when they want to, disrupt what is the activity in the Straits, although they can no longer control the Straits of Hormuz.
Thank you for highlighting that, Professor Gunratna. Please do stay with us as we come back to you for another discussion. Now, staying in the region, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have issued a blunt response to US President Donald Trump's recent claims that the ongoing war involving Iran could end soon, and said that Tehran has made it clear that the timeline for ending the conflict will not be determined by Washington but by Iran itself. President Trump has suggested that the conflict could end in the near future and said that diplomatic or military developments might soon alter the course of the war. However, Iranian officials have responded sharply and called the remarks as premature and dismissive of Tehran's position. RGC has also said that Tehran alone will decide when the war comes to an end, signaling that Iran has no intention of letting external powers determine the outcome. RGC has stressed that any end to the war will depend on Iran's strategic calculations and its assessment of the battlefield situation. Now we welcome Ms. Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ms. Dasgupta, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this situation, why do you think Iran has been so bold even before or while the negotiations were going and after being attacked, and now that they have made more enemies, in the Gulf entirely? Why are they still so bold about, stating that they alone can decide when this ends?
Well, there are two major reasons for this, Asuma. The first one is their ideological background. They are a Shia sect. They faced a Karbala battle against the rest of the Sunni Islamic world, and for them, martyrdom or shahidiyat or whatever they want to call it is something to be aspired to. They do not fear death. They in fact celebrate it, specifically if it goes towards the cause of their nation or the cause of their Allah. So for them, entire annihilation as a nation does not matter. For them, it is just a wait for their akhirat. So ideologically, for them, even death is just the beginning, however Hollywood it may sound. The second part of the conflict is that it is like a prize fight. They are willing to take in as much pounding as they can. In return, they are giving a really good fight back, attacking key assets of not just USA, not just Israel, but they're attacking the core of what the Gulf economy was located at. So when they say that we will decide when the conflict ends, it shows that they know that even if a small fragment of the IRGC stays active, it is enough to disrupt the economy of the Middle East and hence cause problems for all the Gulf nations and USA and anybody who decides to ally with Israel. So they know they have that last trump card. I know that Iran is taking a huge beating. The desalination plant is gone. There's been an attack on Bandar Abbas. They have, in fact, most of Tehran is rubble right now because of the carpet bombing that's been happening. Their oil fields are on fire, but it does not matter to them. They do not fear death. At least the fraction that is in power, that is controlling this entire narrative, they do not fear death of themselves and of the others who might be dissenting from their point of view. They do not fear annihilation. They know they control the narrative of the war as long as they have the capability to strike back. And they have repeatedly told the world that we have been preparing for this war for 10 years. That means from JCPOA times, at least. So they know that they would ultimately fight a battle of do and die with the Western powers, and they've been equipping themselves with it. So as long as there is one last missile to fire, one last man who's ready to light that matchstick, and go after these powers, he would fight. And that is the reason why IRGC is so confident in saying that we will decide the course. We will ask when it is supposed to end, what are the terms, we will set it. Because the losses to USA, who answers to its own people, to Israel, who has a large Jewish population to answer to the UAE and Saudi Arab, who have their own people to protect, is much more than IRGC or Iran, who does not really answer to all its people.
Thank you for highlighting that. And Ms. Dasgupta, now that Iran has Iran last week, or the president Pezeshkian apologized to the Gulf countries that they won't be attacking them anymore, etc. But now we don't see the situation changing even a bit. What's your analysis? Do you think that his stance, and there's a disalignment between his stance, the President Pezeshkian's stance, and IRGC's strategy?
So there are 2 points again in this. One, he added a caveat: as long as there is no attack coming from that particular nation towards Iran, we will stop our fight with our neighboring countries. That did not stop. US controlled their airfields, their military zones in those particular nations, and continued to use it to attack Iran. So so Pezeshkian and IRGC and the other felt justified in attacking those countries despite that statement. The second part of it is it shows how there is a fissure between who is actually attacking and the diplomatic front of Iran. So Pezeshkian, Araghchi, all the others present a diplomatic front of the nation, while IRGC, the Basij, the paramilitary forces, they are the ones who are controlling the actual ammunition and the strategy of the war that is playing out in the Middle East theater. So for this, no matter what you get Pezeshkian or Araghchi to sign off on a diplomatic table, until unless it is backed by the IRGC themselves, the Iranian military and the other paramilitary forces, until unless they are agreeing to what is written in letter and spirit on any peace document, it will never actually flow out as they have signed it to be. It is only a diplomatic front as long as if it is not supported by the military forces. So here it shows the 2 faces of Iran: the split in the power, the split in the controlling mechanism of Iran and its global and internal politics. So for me, Pezeshkian's word with the caveat shows exactly that he knows that he does not really control the entire military power. Even as the president, he does not control the narrative of the war. He's in fact more controlled by the people that he's supposed to be controlling, that is the army.
Very insightful. Thank you very much, Ms. Dasgupta, for sharing that analysis with us on News 6 World. Now we move on. A stark warning has been issued by US President Donald Trump amid the ongoing conflict with Iran. It has been said that Iran would be hit 20 times harder if the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted. The warning was delivered after Tehran signaled that regional oil exports could be halted if US and Israeli strikes continue. Meanwhile, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has responded by saying that Iran will determine when the war ends, signaling no immediate backing down. However, Trump has also suggested that the war may not last long, describing the current military campaign as a short-term operation. Furthermore, it has been revealed that several key targets inside of Iran, including major electricity production sites, have deliberately been left untouched but could be struck if escalation continues. Meanwhile, global markets have reacted sharply. Oil prices briefly surged to their highest levels in more than 3 years amid fears of supply disruption through the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial route that carries nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply. Let's listen into what the US president has shared.
About the strait, you mean?
Yeah, straight.
Yeah, well, I want to keep it open. I want to keep it good. You know, it doesn't pertain to us so much as it does to China. We're really helping China here and other countries because they get a lot of their energy from the straits. But, hey, look, we have a good relationship with China. It's my honor to do it.
Now we welcome back Professor Rohan Gunratna. He joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, as we were talking about Iran's capability, and do you think that there could be a tactic or strategy change by the new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, that in earlier discussion you mentioned the missiles that have been launched compared to initial times, it's been decreased substantially?
Asuma, Mujtaba Khamenei,
Yes.
the second son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is a very hardline leader. I have conducted my own research into him, and he served with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps before, and he was also in charge of the Basji forces, the IRGC-linked internal security forces that suppressed the protesters. He's also the key driver of Iran's nuclear program to build a functional nuclear weapon. He was the chief of staff of his father, who was killed on the first day of the war. So he will continue to have a very hardline attitude, especially because his mother, father, his wife, and his other family members, including a child, was killed by the Israeli strike. So we cannot expect him to take a softer stand than his father. So my personal view is that until militarily the Iranian regime leadership is decapitated and their rank and file is decimated, Iran will continue to fight. We do not see that they will even enter into a sincere diplomatic negotiation, except putting up a diplomatic front, until and unless their military capabilities are eroded and a new leadership is appointed, that is, leaders who will run Iran democratically.
How do you analyze that, the fact that these IRGC corps seem to have a different strategy with President Pezeshkian, as I asked Mr. Gupta earlier as well, but like instead of him controlling IRGC, is it them controlling him? What's your take?
So Iran has two capabilities. One is Iran has its own Army, Navy, Air Force, and Iran also has the IRGC Army, Navy, Air Force. So these are two separate entities. The president controls the Iranian Army, Navy, Air Force, while the Mujtaba Khamenei, he controls the IRGC. So IRGC is the force that is directly reporting to the supreme leader. Previously Ali Khamenei and now Mujtaba Khamenei. So IRGC is willing to kill and die. They are very much into winning the fight. They have that mentality, or they want to die. So I believe that the targeting should be focused on IRGC because that is the entity that built Iran's nuclear program. That is the entity that built Iran's missile program. And that is the entity that funded and supported and directed terrorist proxies both in the Middle East and globally. So that is where the focus should be in order to give Iran back to the beautiful Iranian people. And if that is not done in this war, Iran will go back to the old practice of building a functional nuclear weapon, which they will acquire sooner than later. Second is they will continue to replenish their depleted missile arsenal. And of course, they will continue with supporting their terrorist proxies.
Yes, we will be eyeing that. Thank you very much for joining us today and sharing that insight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump is pressing Republican lawmakers to push through 5 major priorities ahead of the midterm elections. These include tougher voter restrictions, proof of citizenship requirements, limits on mail-in ballots, bans on transgender surgeries for children, and restrictions on men participating in women's sports. He frames these measures as crucial to keeping Republican control of the House and Senate, and indicated he would delay signing new bills until they are enacted. The proposed SAVE Act would tighten voter registration rules and could be a key focus for GOP lawmakers. At the same time, Trump's administration is appealing court rulings that blocked executive orders targeting 4 law firms, arguing that lower courts overstepped and the president has broad constitutional authority. The D.C. Circuit Court has not yet set arguments, but these moves show Trump pushing both legally and legislatively to strengthen GOP position ahead of November. Now we welcome back Ms. Shruti Dasgupta. She is joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ms. Dasgupta, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how do you analyze this situation? Is it making Trump's support lower or better these, what he has suggested for midterms?
Well, the suggestions that he's taken on are exactly the concerns of most of Republican voters. So addressing them before heading into midterms is a good political decision, as well as good for the nation as a whole. I do believe that there should be citizenship checks before you vote. It is there in most nations, even most third world countries. So first world nation having to fight its way into seeing whether voter registration or voter ID proof is something they should consider or not is very absurd to me. That is a primary concern, and it should be for any party member. But the Democrats are very reluctant to let this pass through, and of course that puts a big question mark on the Democrats' faith value in the entire electoral system, because it seems that they do not want people to be checked to be US citizens, especially in light of the fact that they have millions of refugees. So that is a major concern, and it should be addressed. They are also doing, I think, he's also asking for a stopping of the mail-in ballots, which the Democrats are saying is supposed to reduce the turnout. But a lot of the mail-in ballots, I believe, in the past elections have been found to be invalid and fake, because there is no registration process. Anybody can just fill in that ballot and mail it in. So he wants an end to it. And whether it should be ended or whether there should be additional clauses in it that only allow citizens and only are for very extreme circumstances like physical disability or old age to be added as a factor where they can mail in their ballots or not is something that for US to consider. But I understand where the sentiments for such harsh reforms are coming in, because in the midterms, the Republicans are split because of his tariff problems. He's trying to hide it under the carpet of his Epic Fury operation. And he might just succeed in doing that, because a lot of US people don't mind pulling down the Iranian regime. What they do not like is the dead body bags that are coming back, 8 up till now. And that is something very much against what the Republicans had promised. They had promised that they do not want to fight foreign wars, but yet here they are. So he does have a problem in his own voter base, and so he wants to strengthen in on the promises that he delivered, the transgender issue, the citizenship and proof issue. So these are things which are essential to Republican voters, and he is doing it, playing it well politically.
The physics was known for quite a while, and so I think it hasn't really changed our understanding the quantum world work.
I'm with the James Webb.
Hello and welcome. I'm Rashawn Gidwani, and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines for this hour. Iran's Revolutionary Guard say they will not allow 1 liter of oil to be shipped from the Middle East if U.S. and Israeli attacks continue. President Donald Trump responds saying that the U.S. would hit Iran much harder if it blocked exports from the vital energy-producing region. U.S. President Donald Trump is considering easing oil sanctions on Russia and releasing emergency crude stockpiles as part of a package aimed at decreasing global oil prices amid the Iran conflict. The deliberations reflect White House worries that the surge in oil prices will affect Republican chances in the midterms. Oil prices fell today after hitting their highest level in more than 3 years in the prior session, as U.S. President Donald Trump predicts the war in the Middle East could end soon, easing concerns about prolonged disruptions to global oil supplies. Media reports that one woman has been killed and 8 people have been injured by Iranian strikes in Manama, capital of Bahrain. The reports come amid regional fallout as tensions escalate. Australian police extracts 5 Iranian women soccer players from the team's hotel before they were granted asylum. The 5 players, including team captain Zara Gunbari, sought protection after the team were branded wartime traitors for refusing to sing their national anthem before an Asian Cup match. Turkey said on Monday that NATO air defenses shoot down a second Iranian ballistic missile that had entered its airspace and warned that it would move against any such threats, which increasingly pose a test for Ankara and the alliance. The incident in southern Turkey marks the second intercepted missile from Iran in the last week. According to media reports, Germany has temporarily relocated staff from its embassy in Baghdad, Iraq, citing heightened security risks amid the escalating Middle East conflict, while keeping the mission reachable with legal and consular services already severely limited. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul has urged Tehran to halt the attacks. Ukraine's Maxim Merezhkovsky credits artificial intelligence for helping him win a silver medal at the Milano Cortina Winter Paralympics, calling ChatGPT a revolutionary technology after finishing runner-up in Sunday's biathlon event. Ukraine have won 10 medals at this year's Paralympics so far. And here are the top stories for this hour. Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi says that Tehran will decide when the conflict ends. He said even if the United States or Israel asks for a ceasefire, Iran will only consider it if there are guarantees that attacks will not happen again. Garibabadi also claimed that Iran has seriously damaged both the United States and Israel. He pointed to rising global energy prices and economic disruption as proof that Iran's strategy is working. Meanwhile, differences are beginning to surface between Washington and Tel Aviv over the war's objectives. Israeli media says U.S. advisors have warned President Donald Trump that the campaign has not delivered the quick collapse of Iran that many had expected. Reports also say Trump's advisors are now framing the situation as a victory to create an exit strategy. Joining us live to tell us more now is Peter Baum, editor of the Weekly Blitz. He's joining us straight from London. Sir, thank you for joining us. Good to see you again. What do you believe that Tehran's capabilities are as far as creating a ceasefire or essentially calling upon one? Do you believe that they can? As far as I'm concerned, Trump will only end this when they entirely annihilate Iran's capabilities as far as their nuclear capabilities are concerned. Please, sir, tell me more.
No, I think you're absolutely spot on this one. I can't disagree with your own analysis. Now, for you and your viewers and listeners, I've been very fortunate in the last 24 hours to be included in meetings with some very high-profile Israeli, American, and British politicians and opposition, and representatives from all 3 militaries. Unfortunately, because they were under Chatham House rules, I'm obliged not to give name names or give credibility to statements. But I can tell you and your viewers and listeners that at the moment, the Israeli and American military are coordinating as one on this, unprecedented levels of successful coordination, not only from the Air Force and the Navy, but also from the covert operations of Mossad and the CIA. However, everyone was agreed that the midterm elections coming up will represent a negative challenge to the Trump administration if the war is prolonged. There is no doubt about that for a whole variety of reasons. And that is why a very quick win will be in the interests of obviously the Israelis, but also the Trump administration. But both countries recognize that their objective, to fulfill the objective and not to create a future conflict with Iran, will necessitate, as you quite rightly identified, the total destruction of the nuclear capabilities that Iran has, albeit that they have been severely diluted, not only in the June conflict, but certainly in the current 9 or 10 days that this conflict has been going on.
So the only reason that this is essentially being framed or projected to be framed as a victory is only because of the midterm elections, please?
No, not at all. I think given what's actually happening, and you can see this in Iran itself, the current regime in Iran has been severely dented militarily, and make no mistakes about it, their level to inflict greater military damage on Israel, given the number of rocket launchers that have been taken out, is becoming less and less. Military statisticians take a note of the daily inflow of rockets and ballistic missiles from Iran, and as each day passes, they are on a downward trajectory. So that gives the world at large an idea that their ability to continue this war has been quite severely damaged.
Sir, please stay with us. We'll come back to you shortly. Next up, 4 members of the Tehran-backed Kataib Imam Ali group were killed in northern Iraq in what the group describes as American airstrikes. The incident occurred in the Debs district of Kirkuk province, according to official statements. The group blamed U.S. for the attack, calling it an act of aggression as tensions continue to rise in the region. This strike comes amid broader military activity in Iraq and heightened U.S.-Iran tensions in the Middle East. And now joining us to tell us more is, of course, a guest who goes by the name of Satoru Nagao, but he's currently not on the line. So let me tell you more about what we have from the 11th day of the war. Here's a little recap. Essentially, in the first few days of the war, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated by U.S. and Israeli forces, and now Iran, in a defiant move, has essentially chosen a new successor for their regime. And now, to tell us more about all of this is Satoru Nagao, a fellow from the Hudson Institute. He's joining us live from Tokyo. Sir, I just shared that story, but I'd love to get your insights on this as well. Do you believe that Iran choosing a new leader is extremely defiant? What are your thoughts, sir, please?
In this case, Iran continued to fight because of this. They choose a leader, but that leader is a little bit symbolic leader because he did not have any political experience. So that's why to lead the Revolutionary Guard or to lead Iran's hawkish group, in this case, he cannot show his leadership. So that's why his leadership could be something symbolic. So real mastermind is backside of him, and which is Revolutionary Guard. So currently, to fight against U.S. and Israel as a group, they integrate their effort. But once tension has a little bit ease, in this case, such kind of the system only fight for the war will face something difficulty in the peacetime, I guess. So that's why the view from the US and the Israel, how to deal with him is a little bit controversial, because in the war, as a symbol, he will work well, but in the peacetime, there is a problem inside. So which one is better for the US and the Israel is a little bit controversial as a strategy just now, I think.
You mentioned peacetime. Okay, let's say hypothetically that the US and Israel approve this new leader for Iran. I've also seen, and there have been reports of unrest with the people of Iran towards this current regime. Do you feel like in the future, if it's not the US and Israel, then the people of Iran will essentially protest against this new leader? What are your thoughts, sir?
No. What I want to say is rising tension, easing the tension, rising tension, easing tension. The US and Israel can repeat it as a strategy, if this is the effective way. So current leader is just symbolic. They cannot show the leadership himself, but because of as a symbol, it is useful. So this means that this is leader for war, but not leader in the peacetime. So that's why the tension rise and lower, or lower, rise and lower, and something like that. It could be the strategy to deal with this. But at the same time, just now, tension is rise and this is in the war. So that's why it's, how to control is my skill of the US and the Israel side, I think. Of course, if they find chance to kill him, of course it is possible, and they will do that, I think. But if they cannot find where he is and where they should attack, in this case, other tactics in the other long-term strategy or the other tactics temporary, anyway, releasing the tension is also the useful against Revolutionary Guard, I believe.
Sir, please stay with us. We'll be right back with you. Next up, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has held a phone conversation with Bahraini Foreign Minister Abdul Latif bin Rashid Al Zayani over the current situation in the Gulf region. During the phone call, Wang Yi has said that the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of all countries should be respected, and all acts of attacking civilians and non-military targets should be condemned. Zayani had briefed Wang Yi on the regional situation and the Bahraini position, and has said that Bahrain has always been a peace-loving country and should not be subject to unlawful attacks. Zayani has expressed Bahrain's appreciation and gratitude for China's just stance, while voicing its willingness to work with Gulf countries and China to strengthen communication and coordination at both bilateral and multilateral platforms. And now joining us again is Satoru Nagao, fellow from the Hudson Institute. He's joining us live from Tokyo. Sir, how do you believe that the military in Iran right now can essentially filter out who's the threat and who's not? From images I've seen and reports, I know that the US and Israel forces are attacking oil sites. I know that oil sites in Bahrain have also been attacked. But how do militaries essentially filter out who's a target and who's not? Is it through the use of AI? Please tell me more.
In case of China, China rely on the Strait of Hormuz. They import oil from Iran through the Strait of Hormuz. They import oil from other country through Strait of Hormuz. So just now, China is confusing the situation. Strait of Hormuz is actually blockaded, and Iran tried to stop all the ship. Of course, Iran declared that they will not stop the ship to go China, but at the same time, view from the situation, the insurance company do not distinguish the destination of the ship. And so anyway, the ship cannot going through the Strait of Hormuz. Only the exceptional ship can go through. So that's why China want to ease the tension in this region. In this case, the worry is Iran's attack against the Gulf countries. Iran attack against the Sunni Arab Gulf countries, including Bahrain, means that this country has the right of self-defense to. This means simply said they will retaliate against Iran could happen. So that's why if they retaliate against Iran, the tension will not rise, and China will face a long-term problem in the Strait of Hormuz. That's why China want to intervene and negotiate with both sides, Iran and Sunni Arab countries, to ease tension. But China's role in this case is very limited anyway, because the core problem is US-Israel versus Iran, and China cannot persuade them so well because their influence is limited. So China tried to ease the tension, but indeed it is impossible to stop it. But that is the current situation, I think.
Do you believe that insurance companies will be biased towards Chinese companies importing oil? How do you believe that they essentially filter out who they can support based on the cooperation of countries that we're seeing right now? Please.
The insurance, view from the insurance company need to get the money through the insurance business. So that's why if the ship goes through the Strait of Hormuz, can Iran identify the destination of the ship? The insurance company doubt it. That's why anyway Iran will attack the ship, and the insurance company need to pay if attack has happened. And this is not a benefit for insurance company. So that's why the insurance company do not distinguish which destination ship will go. So this is understandable view from the benefit and the cost. So that's why this is not biased. This is simply based on money.
Thank you very much for your time, sir. Much appreciated. Next up, in a recent post on X, the Indian Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has shared updates on the country's LPG supply amid geopolitical disruptions. The ministry has directed oil refineries to increase LPG production and use the additional output for domestic household supplies. Moreover, to ensure fair distribution and prevent hoarding or black marketing, a 25-day interbooking period has been introduced. Reports say that domestic cooking gas supplies have been prioritized, while imported LPG for non-domestic use is being reserved for essential services, such as hospitals and educational institutions. To address supply requests from other commercial establishments, including hotels, restaurants, and industries, the ministry has constituted a committee of 3 executive directors from oil marketing companies to review representations. The move comes after a sudden shortage of commercial LPG cylinders that alarmed the hospitality sector, with associations warning that operations could shut down if supplies are not restored. India consumes about 31.3 million tons of LPG annually, with 87% going to households and the remaining used in commercial establishments. And now joining us to tell us more is Peter Baum, editor from the Weekly Blitz. He's joining us from London. Sir, this really sounds to me like there could be a domestic war of sorts, with essentially civilians and hospitality establishments fighting for gas. What's the situation in London? Have there been any issues with regards to gas, cooking at home, that sort of thing? Please tell me more. Sir, I believe you might be on mute. Are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Please continue.
Okay. In London, for the moment, there have been no such issues at all. The only issue there has been anger directed at the oil companies for raising the price of oil, gasoline at our petrol stations, immediately the war started. and remember, such oil was prepaid for. So opportunistic profiteering from the oil companies has been all over the UK press. And as we saw, although oil prices spiked, I think, to about $115 a gallon, they've come down quite dramatically in less than 24 hours, given the statements made by Trump. Now, should we see a prolonged war, then clearly that's going to have an impact domestically, not only on the UK, but in all Western countries. What is interesting, though, if one speaks to the oil analysts, and specifically those coming from India, prior to the outbreak of the conflict, Prime Minister Modi was visiting Israel. I think that we all remember that, and we all saw the links between the two nations. It would be astounding to me, not only to me, but to other oil analysts, if the Indian government were not aware of what Israel and the United States were going to do, and therefore would have had ample opportunity to increase reserves. Now, if we look at the oil markets and see the reserves that were being created just weeks before the outbreak of the conflict, this would have given those nations in the know some kind of backstop, some kind of protection to avoid the kind of thing that you have just been highlighting of what's going on in India and questioning about what may happen in the UK. But for the moment, sir, absolutely no shortage of supplies. The only thing we did see was opportunistic profiteering from the petrol companies at the beginning of the conflict.
Capitalism on full display here. Sir, what's the mood or view towards electric vehicles in the UK? Do you believe that this is the time where civilians are interested in buying one in the future after what they've witnessed as far as the Middle East conflict is concerned? Please.
Quite the reverse, actually, not just because of the conflict, it's because of the marketing of the electric vehicles have been somewhat disingenuous. Being stuck on a motorway in a traffic jam in an electric vehicle is no fun, believe me, I've been there. The number of charging points is insufficient for the number of electric vehicles raised. There was a time when there was going to be, it would be a tax incentive to buy an electric vehicle. Absolutely no more. So we see in the UK anyway a declining market for EVs, and good old petrol cars and even diesel cars being more popular now than they have been in the last 3 years.
Right. Thank you very much for your time, sir. We'll speak soon. Next up, Israeli attacks are continuing across Lebanon as the conflict with Hezbollah intensifies. Airstrikes have been reported in southern Lebanon, the east, and parts of Beirut as Israel widens its military campaign following the escalation triggered by the broader regional war. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has claimed a series of new attacks against Israeli military positions. Missiles were reportedly fired at several Israeli sites, including military installations near the border and strategic facilities deeper inside Israel. Furthermore, Hezbollah fighters have also reported clashes with Israeli troops along the frontier as Israeli ground forces continue operations near southern Lebanese towns. However, the fighting is also worsening the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. More than 517,000 people have been registered as displaced, according to Lebanese authorities, since hostilities resumed last week. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. Iran's Revolutionary Guard say they will not allow 1 liter of oil to be shipped from the Middle East if US and Israeli attacks continue. President Donald Trump responds saying that the US would hit Iran much harder if it blocked exports from the vital energy producing region. US President Donald Trump is considering easing oil sanctions on Russia and releasing emergency crude stockpiles as part of a package aimed at decreasing global oil prices amid the Iran conflict. The deliberations reflect White House worries that the surge on oil prices will affect Republican chances in the midterms. Meanwhile, oil prices fell today after hitting their highest level in more than 3 years in the prior session. As US President Donald Trump predicts the war in the Middle East could end soon, easing concerns about prolonged disruptions to global oil supplies. Media reports that 1 woman has been killed and 8 people have been injured by Iranian strikes in Manama, capital of Bahrain. The reports come amid regional fallout as tensions escalate. Australian police extracts 5 Iranian women soccer players from the team's hotel before they were granted asylum. The 5 players, including team captain Zahra Ghanbari, sought protection after the team were branded wartime traitors for refusing to sing their national anthem before an Asian Cup match. Turkey said on Monday that NATO air defenses shoot down a second Iranian ballistic missile that had entered its airspace and warned that it would move against any such threats, which increasingly pose a test for Ankara and the alliance. The incident in southern Turkey marks the second intercepted missile from Iran in the last week. The Lebanese Ministry of Health reported on Monday that Israeli airstrikes on multiple towns in southern Lebanon killed 12 people and injured several others amid rising violence. Ukraine's Maxim Murashkovsky credits artificial intelligence for helping him win a silver medal at the Milano Cortina Winter Paralympics, calling ChatGPT a revolutionary technology after finishing runner-up in Sunday's biathlon event. Ukraine have won 10 medals at this year's Paralympics so far. Now we start this hour with US. US President Donald Trump has said Washington's military campaign against Iran is already delivering results. Trump has said that the operation is moving far ahead of the initial timeline. He said American forces are now targeting Iran's drone manufacturing facilities. According to Trump, drone launches from Iran have already dropped by 83%. However, he made it clear that US actions will continue. President Trump also defended the strikes, saying they prevented Iran from quickly obtaining a nuclear weapon and attacking Israel and other countries in the Middle East. He claimed Iran could have built a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks if the United States had not acted. President Trump also said an attack on Iranian girls' school is under investigation and added that authorities are closely monitoring possible Iranian sleeper cells inside the United States. Let's listen in.
If we didn't do that B-2 attack, Israel would have been wiped out. They would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks after that. And even now, I think they were looking to take over the Middle East, because when you look, and we have pretty good proof, all of those missiles that were so stupidly aimed at Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they were all aimed, and others, at countries that were sort of like, leave us alone. They were all right. They were sort of neutral, but they weren't doing it. All of a sudden, they're getting hit with missiles. And they could have gone one of two ways. They could have gone toward their side, like, we're with you, or they could have gone with our side, and they really went with our side.
Which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, is sold and used by other countries, you know that. And whether it's Iran, who also has some tomahawks, I wish they had more, but whether it's Iran or somebody else, the fact that a tomahawk is very generic, it's sold to other countries, but that's being investigated right now.
Now we welcome Dr. Sanjay Kumar. He's a journalist at the Korea Herald, joins us live from Seoul. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, as midterm approach and the tensions escalate, including now this war includes many other countries, not just Iran, US, and Israel. How do you analyze how will a US justify, President Trump justify his actions moving forward?
See, Asuma, President Trump is trying to conclude this war. And in the beginning, what he was thinking, what his strategy was, is not getting aligned with the outcomes that we have seen in the last 10 days. Today is the 11th day of this war. And from Middle East and Iran's perspective, and from the world's perspective, we should say, the war is still not concluded. It is ongoing, escalations are ongoing, supply chain disruptions are, scattered, disrupted. If you see the stock market prices, if you see the oil prices, it is, although this morning it was a little down, but the entire economic systems across the globe is uncertain. President Trump is trying to make this stabilize by making frequent comments that it is going to be over very soon. But the fact of the matter is that the entire world is not ready to accept the President Trump's stabilizing comments. And this is where the problem comes. And the entire world is looking towards US to settle this issue as soon as possible. And many experts are saying that if we leave it to Israel and Iran, then this uncertainty is not going to end sometime soon. And that is why, there has to be some involvement of some other leaders and other countries, which is not happening right now. We are only seeing President Trump speaking and his comments only coming. There is a serious need here to have engagement of different leaders who are not involved directly in this war. I mean, we can engage Europe, we can engage Russia here, we can engage some other countries. And that is very important right now, which is not looking to happen very soon.
Yes, building on that, Dr. Kumar, what about United Nations? Can they do something about this? Can anyone mediate realistically between US, Iran, and Israel? And even if they do decide to come in on the table, if directly or indirectly, how do you think, how would they trust each other? Because these attacks happened during the negotiations.
You have really pointed out a very substantial aspect of this entire war, because from Iran's perspective, if we see their comments in the last weeks, especially what Foreign Minister has said, they had been reiterating again and again that institutions like United Nations have failed, and they had been referencing the comments and the engagement that Iran was trying to forge with UN. So United Nations, if there are some doubts about the United Nations capability in the last few years, but still this is high time. I think if UN can be involved here, and if they can disengage this consolidation over war, that would be a game changer, I would say. Because if you see from a geopolitical perspective and this war game perspective, we are not seeing any end game thing. If you see very frankly, then President Trump is making comments, and it looks like he is trying to somehow conclude and reach to an end game. But neither Iran nor Israel, these two parties are not looking to disengage from this, and that is why United Nations role become very important here. It is immensely important, and I think if UN can be engaged, that would send positive signals. And what we were discussing, other players, including Russia, China, India, and some other countries, including Europe, they can also come on the table and de-escalate this entire uncertainty.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for sharing that insight with us. Please do stay with us. Now, moving on to South Korea. South Korea says it cannot block U.S. forces from redeploying some military equipment amid the conflict in the Middle East. Reports suggest Patriot missile systems and artillery batteries are being moved from bases like Osan, possibly to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. President Lee Jae-myung said while Seoul expressed opposition, it is not in a position to make demands. He reassured that the removal of some U.S. weapons does not weaken deterrence against North Korea, citing South Korea's strong defense spending and conventional capabilities. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun has noted that the U.S. and South Korean militaries are in discussions over the possible redeployment of Patriot missiles. South Korea hosts about 28,500 U.S. troops and surface-to-air defense systems as part of its joint strategy against North Korea. Meanwhile, U.S. and Israeli forces have been striking strategic targets in Iran, aiming to disrupt nuclear and missile capabilities, underlining the broader regional tensions affecting global military deployments. Now we welcome back Dr. Sanjay Kumar. He joins us live from Seoul. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for staying with us. Now, as tensions escalate, this redistribution of U.S. armament around the world, how do you think U.S. should balance their commitment towards and also the expectations from, South Korea, Taiwan, in supporting their defense towards, their regional threats like North Korea in South Korea's case, while also supporting their war efforts in Middle East, plus supporting their allies in Middle East like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and UAE?
Asuma, we have to understand when it comes to the East Asian and the Northeast Asian security dynamics, the army which is here, the base which is here in this part of the world, in Japan and South Korea, is part of the trilateral alliance between US, Korea, and Japan. And bilaterally also this alliance is respected and had been executed according to the norms that it has. But when it comes to the strategic flexibility, it is up to United States to use the Washington's leverage here, because at the end of the day, the base belongs to the Washington U.S. government. So if you see from that autonomy perspective, then of course U.S. will have to decide over their global military. Of course, the alliance partners will have to be made confident enough, and that is why the role of Japan and Korea comes into. And President Lee has correctly pointed out today that there are some limitations over stopping U.S. military if they decide to deploy some of the assets. So there is some autonomy and technical aspects of autonomy in the within the alliance, and President Lee is trying to highlight that aspect. Because President Lee also has some domestic pressure, because Korean people are especially South Korean people, they don't want to get engaged in any kind of war directly or indirectly, which may offend the other side of this peninsula. I mean the North Korean side. They don't want to offend in any case, and any such change and any such kind of opposition would somehow disturb the balance of the the Northeast Asian security, and we have to understand that Russia and China is also there in this part of the world, and because of that, President Lee looks very strategic and very I would say very calibrated when it comes to comment on the redeployment or the asset allocation or deployment to the Middle East. So this is the scenario.
But don't you think that, you know, the expectations that South Korean people had towards U.S. protecting them by letting them use these, by South Korea letting them have this base and huge investments that they have been doing, expecting of course, something in return. Don't you think they are a little bit upset about this?
Yes, if you ask me the Korean people's sentiments, they are in a position to engage in any kind of war, including this Middle East. Even during the Russian-Ukraine war also, South Korea was very reluctant and they decided not to send lethal weapons. And especially in this scenario, in this case, if any engagement directly or indirectly is being used against Middle East, that will again have some repercussions and consequences to have new hostile countries, and that is why Seoul doesn't want to offend or like make new hostile countries because South Korea being a middle power, they don't want to get into such kind of escalations. And indirectly, if US gets involved into this, indirectly it is going to somehow change the perceptions about South Korea, and South Korean people are very much aware of that. And what they contribute when it comes to the budget and all these, it is very much centered on the security in the Northeast Asia. Any dismantlement or any kind of movement would have long run, have consequence in long run. And there is a Taiwan aspect here as well, which has to be taken into consideration. And that is why any kind of movement, it is not going to give a positive signal to Korean people. And that is why Korean people's sentiment is very much in opposition of such kind of redeployment. Yeah, this is the situation right now.
With that, I'd like to thank Dr. Sanjay Kumar for giving us that timely insight on this news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham has criticized America's Gulf partners, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, for refusing to take part in the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran. Graham has noted that the UAE has officially stated that it will not allow its territory to be used for attacks against Iran. He has described this as deeply disappointing. Moreover, Graham has warned that the U.S. needs partners who are willing to step forward in a fight it cannot afford to lose, and called on Saudi Arabia and other friendly nations to take ownership. Graham has also turned his criticism towards Europe, pointing out Spain's refusal to allow joint U.S. military bases to be used in operations against Iran. Now we welcome retired Colonel Sanjay Sirohi. He's international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Colonel Sirohi, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, can you tell us why are these countries, reluctant to join or give such support, and how dangerous is it to even host U.S. bases in your country? As I also want to point out that one of the countries who have never allowed such is India. Why so?
Good morning, Asuma. Thank you very much for having me on your news channel and discussing something very, very important and interesting. Now, look, the Republicans know that in the coming elections, they are going to have very tough time during the midterm election. That's why Republican lawmaker Senator Lindsey Graham has said that the Gulf countries should take more active part, and he showed his frustration and disappointment with the Gulf countries that they are not doing what they should have done because the Americans think that they are fighting this war because of the Gulf country. So this is the disappointment from the American side, But as far as the Gulf countries are concerned, they have 2 points which why they are not engaging with Iran is firstly, they were not given enough warning by the Americans that they are going to strike so fast and so early because the talks were going on and the third round of talk has already been concluded and they were waiting for the fourth round to take place. And in spite of that, the Israelis, they attacked without even informing the Gulf countries. That is the one point they have about that. And secondly, they have realized that by having military bases, they have got involved into the war which they don't want to get involved. Because the Iranians are now targeting the military assets of Americans in these Gulf countries. As a result of that, they are having a lot of destruction that taking place, especially in Saudi Arabia and UAE. So I think, and the reason, the question which you have asked me, that why India, because India knows that if you have military bases, then those military bases will be used by that host country, that country, and that is going to create problem for the other. That's why the Indians, they are not siding with any alignment, with any military alignment. We have our own independent views. I think it is working in the right direction. Asuma.
Yes, and thank you for answering that. And Colonel, how do you think that U.S. Will be pressuring these countries, including countries in Europe, moving forward to join this war? Although, don't you think that if they were highly capable to fight on their own, like they always, or it shows in their dialogues and it reflects in their attitude, then why would they try to drive in other countries to begin with?
Yeah, Asuma, let us go back in the history and see that Americans, wherever they have fought, it has fought not alone. It was always complemented by the NATO countries, including New Zealand and Australia, whether it was Afghanistan or whether it was Iraq or whether it was the Gulf War when Iraq invaded Kuwait. So I think this is the first time that the Americans are fighting alone with Israelis on their side. So initially, the European countries were reluctant to join in this battle. And that is why they never supported this battle, because they knew that this battle is going to create more problems for the Gulf, not only for Gulf countries, for the complete international problems will come up, because now we have seen how the prices of oil have gone up and because of the scarcity of gas and other petroleum products. So I think the Europeans were aware of this problem, and after Mr. Donald Trump has become the president of America, there has always been rift between the European countries and the Americans. That is number one. Initially, even the UK had denied the use of their air bases for the Americans' forces. But later on, Ukraine agreed to that, UK agreed to that, but they said it would be used only for defensive purposes. Even France has moved their aircraft carrier, but that is only for their own defensive purposes in their military base in Cyprus. So I think the Americans, now they have realized, Americans, as the war is progressing, and the war is not coming to an end from any side, especially from the Iran, in spite of putting pressure by the Americans on the Iranians are not ready to negotiate. They are not interested in ceasefire. So now the pressure is building up in America, in domestic public. That's why Republicans are not worried that all the other Gulf countries where the fighting is going, the other Gulf countries should also take part in that. Because the expenditure, if you see, Asuma, the expenditure which is going on is enormous. $891 million are spent every day. In the first week itself, $6 billion have been spent. So now the American worry is that from where all that money is going to come. So they were banking on the Gulf countries, but the Gulf countries are not prepared to take active role. So that is the big problem, Asuma.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sirohi, for sharing that deep insight with us. Please do stay with us as we come back to you for our next news as well. Now, moving on. Economic pressures are being felt across the parts of the Middle East and South Asia as global oil prices surge amid the ongoing regional conflict. In Egypt, fuel prices have been raised by 14 to 17%, with diesel and gasoline costs increased nationwide as authorities respond to volatility in global energy markets. However, the government has also moved to cut spending and energy consumption. Several austerity measures have been approved, including restrictions on official travel, reduced government events, and tighter fuel use across sectors. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, emergency energy saving measures have been announced by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Schools have been ordered to close for 2 weeks, while universities are being shifted to online classes in a bid to reduce fuel consumption. Furthermore, government's fuel allocations are being cut by 50%, and a 4-day work week has been introduced for many public offices, with half of staff asked to work from home. Regardless, the measures have drawn mixed reactions. While some residents say the steps could help stabilize the economy, traders warn that school closures and restrictions could hurt small businesses already struggling with rising costs. Let's listen into what the Prime Minister of Pakistan has shared.
आइंदा 2 माह के लिए काबीना के अरकान, वज़रा, मशीरान और मावनीन ख़ुसूसी तनख्वाह नहीं लेंगे। नंबर 4, अरकान पार्लियामेंट की तनख्वाहों में से 25% कटौती की जा रही है। 20 ग्रेड और इससे ऊपर के ऐसे अफसरान जिनकी तनख्वाह 3 लाख से जायद है, इनकी 2 दिन की तनख्वाह की कटौती करके अवामी रिलीफ के लिए, यानी आपकी रिलीफ के लिए इस्तेमाल की जाएगी। मुल्क में ईंधन और तवानाई की बचत के लिए सरकारी और निजी शोबों के हवाले से भी अहम फैसले किए गए हैं। सरकारी और निजी शोबे में इंतहाई ज़रूरी सर्विसेज को छोड़कर, यानी एसेंशियल सर्विसेज को छोड़कर, बाकी तमाम जगहों पर 50% स्टाफ घर से काम करेगा, यानी वर्क फ्रॉम होम। हफ्ते में सिर्फ 4 दिन दफातर खुलेंगे। तेल की बचत के लिए हफ्ते में 1 इजाफी छुट्टी दी जा रही है, मगर इसका इतलाक बैंकों पर नहीं होगा। मजीद सनत, ज़राअत के शोबों पर भी वर्क फ्रॉम होम, यानी घर से काम करना और हफ्ते की 1 इजाफी छुट्टी वाले फैसलों का इतलाक नहीं होगा। फौरी तौर पर तमाम स्कूलों को रवां हफ्ते के आखिर से 2 हफ्तों की छुट्टियां दी जा रही हैं और हायर एजुकेशन के तमाम इदारों में फौरी तौर पर ऑनलाइन क्लासों का आगाज किया जा रहा है।
Now we welcome back retired Colonel Sanjay Sirohi. Thank you very much, Colonel Sirohi, for staying with us. Now, do you think a lot of other countries will follow such moves to effectively reduce the cost and reliance on these changing oil markets or fluctuating oil prices? And also, don't you think if Operation Epic Fury was planned ahead, right, by Israel and US, don't you think they should have given some warnings to many countries who are relying on this Strait of Hormuz for their energy supply? And don't you think they should have had a proper plan to protect Strait of Hormuz?
Well, Asuma, the question is very, very pertinent and is very, very important.
Thank you.
But I want to add to that,
yes,
what you are saying is absolutely correct. The warning should have been given, but I think the warning, indirect warning, was always there. We were aware from the January when Mr. Donald Trump had started threatening Iran, when the protest started in Iran, that help is on the way. And the way the military buildup was taking place, especially the Abraham Lincoln moving from Pacific to Arabian Sea, and the second aircraft carrier, the Aeroflot, moving from Atlantic to Mediterranean. So I think the better indications were there, And I think all the countries who were well managed and well governed must have carried out their homework, and they should have planned for this contingency. When I think it was not a surprise as far as the Israel and American attack was concerned. We were well aware, everyone was aware that this is going to take place. When was the question? Otherwise, whether it will take place or not, it was never in the discussion point. It was only when. And when the talks were going on, still there were threats and counter threats by both the sides. So I think that way, every country should have prepared their contingency plan as far as the energy requirements are concerned, number one. Number two, as regards Pakistan, Pakistan is already a very already is a country where the things are already bad for them. And there the government is not doing anything for last so many years. As a result, Pakistan is the first country for taking all these effective steps, measures to reduce the consumption of their energy products. So I think this, but the other thing which I want to bring out is even Americans and the Israelis were not aware that this war is going to take place so long. They thought that they are going to attack, they are going to kill Khamenei, and after that the protesters will increase in numbers, there will be more protests in Iran, and after some time they will overthrow the regime, and then they will form another government which will be supported by the Americans. That didn't work out, and it misfired. Now the Americans are not even sure that when this war is going to end. So I think all these steps which Pakistan has taken place and the other countries are also on the way to take place, these steps have to be taken if we have to conserve the energy, because as of now we are not sure that for how long this war is going to take place. Asuma.
Yes, we will be like that. With that, I'd like to thank Colonel Sirohi for sharing that insight with us on News6 World. Now we move on to South America. U.S. President Donald Trump said more Venezuelan oil is heading to the United States. Trump has said around 100 million barrels of oil from Venezuela have already arrived and are now being refined in Houston. He has added that another 100 million barrels are on the way, describing the arrangements as a strong partnership between the two countries. Trump said the oil is being processed at refineries specifically designed for Venezuela's heavy crude. He also stressed that the cooperation is good for both Venezuela and the United States. Let's listen into what U.S. President Donald Trump has shared.
We have a formula that's been very good so far, and I think it'll continue to be good. The relationship is extraordinary with Venezuela, smart country. We've taken out 100 million barrels of oil. It's right now in Houston being taken care of and made so beautiful. And you have to see this at work. They have, it's brought to the refineries. It's being refined in Houston, which is made exactly for that product. And so far, but it's 100 million barrels of oil, and now they have another 100 million barrels coming. And it's like a partnership. We're getting along so well with them. It's great for Venezuela, and it's great for the United States.
Now we move on to Australia. Australia has agreed to provide visas to 5 of Iran's women's soccer team players to stay in the country after they sought asylum, fearing persecution in their home nation. Australian Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke has said that the 5 Iranian players had been moved to a safe location by the Australian Federal Police. Burke has added that the remaining players are in a hotel on the Gold Coast, and he has also offered the other team members a chance to stay in Australia. Let's listen into what Tony Burke has shared.
In the very early hours of yesterday,
the physics was known for quite a while, and so that I think it hasn't really changed our understanding the quantum world work.
Our job with the James Webb Space Telescope was to look as far back in time as we could to see the universe as it was young.
Changing the basic attitude about what education is for and what it needs to be.
Biology, medical studies, they make great progress.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy
Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's dive into the top headlines of this hour. Iran has fired a new wave of missiles towards Israel, triggering air raid sirens and forcing residents to seek shelter. The Israeli military says defense systems are intercepting the projectiles as the conflict enters its second week. Iran carries out attacks on US and allied targets across the Gulf, including Bahrain, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. The expanding strikes signal a broader regional dimension to the war. Israeli strikes in Lebanon have pushed the death toll above 480 people as fighting continues along the border. Israel and Hezbollah have exchanged fire for days as hostilities spread beyond Iran. Thousands of people have gathered in Tehran in support of new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei. The demonstrations follow his appointment after his father was killed in US-Israeli strikes. US President Donald Trump has warned Iran it will face a response 20 times harder if shipping is disrupted in the Strait of Hormuz. The narrow waterway is a critical global energy corridor for oil tankers. Meanwhile, global oil prices have fallen in early Asian trading after spiking to nearly $120 a barrel a day earlier. Markets reacted after comments from Donald Trump suggested the conflict could end quickly. Britain says a drone that hit a military base in Cyprus last week likely originated from Lebanon or Iraq. The incident damaged a hangar and raised concerns about attacks on regional bases. 5 members of Iran's women's national football team have been granted humanitarian visas in Australia. The decision follows their elimination from the Asian Cup and comes amid safety concerns about it returning home. Those are the top headlines for the hour. We are continuing to cover escalating conflict in the Middle East. We start with some statements coming from Iran's Revolutionary Guards. They have declared that they will be the ones to determine the end of the ongoing war in the Middle East. The Guards warn that Tehran will not allow any exports from the region if attacks by the US and Israel continue. This statement comes as US President Donald Trump suggested that the conflict could end soon, while Iran's hardline forces showed loyalty to the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. In a related development, key Middle East oil producers have cut daily output. According to reports, Saudi Arabia has reduced its oil production by 2 to 2.5 million barrels a day, while the United Arab Emirates has cut output by 500,000 to 800,000 barrels daily. Kuwait has also lowered production by 500,000 barrels a day, and Iraq by about 2.9 million barrels. Joining us to discuss the ongoing situation in the Middle East is Sol Sadka. He is a political commentator. He joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Sol, for joining us. It's always a great pleasure to speak to you. Let's first talk about self-defense. This, by the US administration and Israel, has been entitled as such an operation inside Iran, with the United States describing their strikes on Iranian territory as preemptive or defensive actions. At what point here does a defensive strike become the very escalation it claims to prevent?
Well, the issue of escalation here is almost moot because the Iranians don't really have any way to escalate at this point. They have been effectively kicked off this escalation ladder. their offensive weapons capabilities just in 10 days have been reduced by about 90%. And we can say that based on what they've been able to put up into the air, the drones and the missiles, those are down about 90%. The Israelis here had their first night, certainly in the center of Israel. They had their first night without any sirens. We had about 13 hours without any missiles being shot here. And we can see the periods between the missiles are spreading out. And when they do come, they come in far smaller batches, usually just one at a time. Whereas before, at the beginning of this war, less than 2 weeks ago, of course, they were shooting dozens at a time. So they've got no way to escalate. So the Americans and the Israelis should be relatively satisfied with what they've achieved so far. We will see how this plays out going forward, although I wouldn't put it past them to completely end the threat of the ballistic missiles within a week or two. There might be elements of drone warfare that will continue with a long tail because they're much harder to pinpoint and remove. But the missile program and the nuclear program, we can reliably be assured from the determination of the public statements and open plans of the Trump administration that they will achieve their goals in those regards, only because anything else would be a total humiliation, and Trump would not like that.
So one could say, however, that one point of leverage that Iran does have is its access and capability possibly to block the Strait of Hormuz, a corridor which is responsible for the passage of around 20% of the world's oil supply. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have released statements today and warned that oil exports of the region could be disrupted if attacks continue. Donald Trump has said a response will be valid 20 times harder than it has previously been struck. In a region responsible for such a large share of the world's oil supply, is targeting military objectives without destabilizing the global oil market even possible in this conflict?
No, you're right. Of course, it's not possible. There was always going to be an oil shock when this inevitably came about. There's no question about that. The prices of oil have gone up by about 30% already. They might rise higher. However, at some point, the Iranians, even if they are able to threaten traffic away from the Straits of Hormuz, that will abate. We can rely on the Americans to completely pound them into the ground when and if they try, and that will get reduced and the damage will be limited. Further, Trump is not particularly bothered about what Chinese manufacturers think about the price of oil. He's really only concerned about what the people, his voters, who will be coming to an election in about 7 months in the United States, what they think. And the price of American oil, the price to the consumer there, is very minimally affected by what comes out of the Middle East these days, because America is now a net energy exporter. They have vast oil fields. He also has a strategic reserve, which he has not yet opened, but if he did, would certainly soften any kind of price rises at the pumps to the American consumer. And this is not likely to cause him major problems. He is not bothered if China has to pay more for their gas. That's not his issue. So the Iranians do indeed have leverage in that regard. It's limited leverage and it's time limited as well, because they won't be able to do it for very long. And if they do it, they will find they have another host of enemies, apart from the enemies they already had, plus the enemies they made by shooting random rockets at them. And so they can't really hurt the right people. So they have leverage, but not against the people that matter, which is Trump and the United States citizenry.
And so historically, particularly in Iran, external military pressure on the country has often consolidated support for hard-line factions within the country's political system. Could the current conflict be reinforcing the very hardline leadership structures that Western powers have long sought to weaken?
Well, in answer to that, we can look back to the people who were saying that exact thing in early June and May last year. Everyone was warning that if you attack the Iranian regime, you're only going to rally the people behind them. And what did we see after that 12-day war? That did significant damage to their nuclear and missile program, or they did not wipe it out. what did we see? We saw protests, including leading up to the protests that we saw in December and January, which the regime was only able to suppress by literally shooting 35,000 protesters in the head. That was the only way they were able to end it. So certainly the previous attacks actually had the opposite effect. They exposed the population that their regime was really a paper tiger, and that perhaps with a small push, they would be able to overthrow them. Perhaps even the people did not realize how psychotic their regime was. They didn't anticipate that level of violence, and that surprised them. But no, so the people of Iran are certainly not going to be rallying around the Iranian regime. The vast majority of people in Iran, at least 80%, do not support the regime. They have a hard core of a few million people, many of whom are economically dependent on the regime for various reasons, who will support them to the death, perhaps, although perhaps not. I mean, perhaps they will not support them to the death. They will support them up to a point, but they're not going to get killed to protect the Ayatollah regime. So no, the facts, in fact, in reality, display the opposite effect, that showing a regime to be a paper tiger encourages their oppressed people to rise up against them, not the opposite.
Okay, so do continue to stay with us. We're now turning to updates coming out of Lebanon. The Israeli Defense Forces say they have completed a series of airstrikes against the Hezbollah-linked Al-Qard al-Hassan Association in Lebanon, which is believed to operate as a quasi-bank for the terror group Hezbollah. The strikes hit multiple assets and vaults with around 30 locations targeted over the past week. Civilian evacuation warnings were issued ahead of the operations. The IDF says Aqqa is used by Hezbollah to store funds, manage salaries, transfer money from Iran and purchase weapons, underlining the military's focus on disrupting the group's financial network. Joining us to discuss this is retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us here on the broadcast. As always, it is a pleasure. The Israeli military here targeting the Al-Qard al-Hassan Association, which is essentially described by Western governments as the financial arm of Hezbollah. When a financial institution serves both militant and civilian functions, how do militaries determine whether it is a legitimate military target?
Thank you, Thomas. I think whenever you strike at such targets, you have intelligence available to you, because Mossad is quite adept at carrying out linkages between financial organizations, whether they are being used for funding of terrorists for their arms and ammunition purchase, or for any philanthropist activity. So we are aware that how Hezbollah functions, because you have to see that what is the system of financial transactions as far as Hezbollah is concerned. Now, Hezbollah functions through charitable and financial institutions. They have informal banking networks and diaspora funding channels, because these are the three main areas from where Hezbollah is going to function. And once you target these financial institutions, you are limiting the reinforcements in terms of making up losses of their weapons and the expenditure of their ammunition. So because Hezbollah requires rockets, missiles, drones, and the operational sustainability of Hezbollah's will get impacted. Okay. So the war is now expanding. You see, the war is not, and coming to your point about military targets, the war is now expanding, that it is not restricting itself to not only the military targets, but each and every activity which is going to facilitate the strength of your opponent in fighting you. So ultimately, we are seeing in Iran also the desalination plants, the oil fields, and Iran is also carrying out similar strikes. So I think that this is a strategy which aims to restrict the fighting strength of Hezbollah. So in those terms, it could be related as a military target because it is supporting the military and based on intelligence available to them, because they would be having definite intelligence on this before they have carried out these strikes.
Okay. Dr. Kochhar, thank you very much. Do stay with us. We're turning over to our next update with some statements coming from the US president, where he said he had a very good phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump told reporters that the discussion focused on Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East. He noted strong tensions between Putin and Ukraine's President Zelensky, saying that they can't seem to get it together. Trump added that Putin expressed a willingness to be helpful in resolving the Iran conflict. He also suggested that Russia could aid the situation by ending the ongoing Ukraine war, which has lasted over 4 years. A foreign policy chief aide to Putin said the Russian president proposed a quick political and diplomatic end to the Iranian conflict. Trump described the conversation as positive and said that he hopes both issues can be addressed diplomatically. Let's take a listen into his statements.
Yes, I had a very good call with President Putin. We had a lot of people on the line from our side, from his side. We were talking about Ukraine, which is just a never-ending fight. And look, there's tremendous hatred between President Putin and President Zelensky. They can't seem to get it together. But I think it was a positive call on that subject. And we obviously talked then about the Middle East. And he wants to be helpful. I said, you could be more helpful by getting the Ukraine-Russia war over with. That would be more helpful. But we had a very good talk, and he wants to be very constructive. Yeah.
Saul Sadka and Dr. Kochhar join us on this story. Is it in any way realistic to expect progress in Middle East diplomacy from the Russian president, while, of course, the Ukrainian war continues unresolved? Saul?
No, not really. This entire thing is kind of a humiliation to Russia. It just shows up the staggering level of difference between what the Russians have and what the Americans have. The Russians went in over 4 years ago now to Ukraine and have still failed to move more than 100 miles from their own borders. And the Americans have essentially dismantled Iran as an offensive threat, 90% of that. And they will achieve the rest within weeks and at minimal cost of men and material. So the Russians aren't in any position to be lecturing the United States or Israel or anyone else about how to fight wars. They don't have any leverage over them. And they might want to salvage some pride by pretending to be a mediator. Although, as you know, the idea of Russia being a peace mediator is absurd.
And Dr. Kochhar, do you think this is a genuine offer for mediation from Moscow, or is it more political symbolism?
I think it's a genuine offer. I'll tell you why. First of all, I want to clear about the Russian offensive. It's almost 18 to 20% of Ukraine, which has been captured by the Russians. And the Russian intention is not to take over the entire Ukraine. They have achieved their aims now, so now they want to get out. Zelensky is not prepared to accept loss of territory, so the matter is stuck there. And Russians have done a calibrated campaign, because you can't fight a war for 4 years in a high intensity mode. So it's a calibrated campaign, and Russians have achieved whatever they wanted to achieve. And that's why President Trump is trying to tell Putin that resolve your differences with Zelensky and finish it off.
Yes.
The matter is actually stuck on Zelensky's table. The second important point is about the war in the Middle East or West Asia we talk about. Russia and Iran are quite aligned to each other. We have seen in this war that specific intelligence has been provided by the Russians as well as the Chinese. And that is why Iran has been able to take out so many targets in the US air bases as well as Israel. So now what I am seeing is this war is started actually impacting the entire world.
Yes.
What happened in 1973 oil shock, it's not even 10%. Today, the world is interconnected. The dependency of oil and energy has grown. Gas is a new equation which has actually come to be playing around in the minds of the people today.
Yes.
So I think everybody wants this war to come to an end. And President Trump is also quite inclined now to finish this war. And Iran, I think, will be prevailed upon. And Russia may play that role. And already, I believe, Putin's people are doing backdoor diplomacy with Iran. So I visualize, you see the state of, and I want to make a perspective very clear about state of Hormuz. Nobody can permanently block it. But a temporary disruption can cause shock waves all over the world, which is already done.
Okay. I do apologise, sir. Do stay with us. Sol, I want to go back to you. We've heard, of course, yesterday that there now is a new supreme leader of Iran, with the Kremlin vocalising support for him. And now we see Donald Trump getting off a phone call with the Russian president. Are you disappointed with his attitude towards Vladimir Putin currently?
Oh, not at all. On the contrary, it's Trump's job to maintain as friendly relations as possible with all people in the world, including belligerents such as Putin. I would just speak to what your previous guest said, the Major General. The idea that the Russians are winning in Ukraine is absurd. They have lost more than 1 million men, and they have trashed their economy. And they do indeed control 20% of Ukraine, but half of that they already controlled before they started their invasion. In fact, more than half of that. So they've captured in 4 years approximately 8% of Ukraine. As to the idea that they didn't want to capture all of Ukraine, well, that's completely false. In fact, on the first day, we know full well that they were trying to capture Kiev and assassinate or capture the president, and they failed completely. So what has happened to Russia, the humiliation they've suffered, the defeat of their armies, the degradation of their 50-year built-up stockpile of weaponry, the exposure of all their equipment, their S-500 batteries that they're so proud of, that they sold to India and all over the world, that have been copied by China and then sold back to Iran, just destroyed on the battlefield, blown up by drones, is a complete humiliation. The Russians will never recover from this. This is the end of Russia, most likely, as an empire, and perhaps even as a nation. This war will end in the breakup of Russia, and perhaps not in the too distant future. Is why they're supporting Iran, because really Iran was the only meaningful ally left. The Iran-China and the Iran-China Russia axis was helping each other in their battles. It was critical for China that Russia hold the line in their war in Ukraine, because that pins the US down in Europe. And it was critical for them that Iran continue their nuclear program and continue their military buildup, because they were hoping that would pin the US down in the Middle East. Well, now that is done. The Iranians are no longer pinning down the United States in the Middle East. And as soon as this offensive is over, the United States will be free to focus east and to limit China's power. And I would add also, furthermore, that while, yes, indeed, we are in a much more globalized world where oil is even more important than it was in 73, the amount of oil circulating on the world's oceans is vastly higher, and a far smaller proportion of it is coming out of the Gulf region. And the portion of it that comes out of the Gulf region has almost no effect on the United States. The United States does not buy that oil. It is India and China that buy that oil. And it is people all points east of the Straits of Hormuz who are going to suffer if the Straits of Hormuz are closed.
Okay. Gentlemen, of course, this warrants a far longer discussion. However, we have ran out of time. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajan Kochar and Sol Saka, for joining us here on the broadcast. We finish this hour with some final updates coming out of the United States. First of all, where the US foreign policy towards Cuba has been thrust into the spotlight as President Trump said the island nation is in serious humanitarian trouble and suggested a friendly takeover could be possible, though he cautioned it might not be friendly. Trump made the comments at a news conference in Doral, Florida, saying the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is handling engagements with the Cuban authorities and might lead efforts if Cuba's government seeks a deal. Meanwhile, the Cuban government has said that it is not engaged in formal high-level talks with the United States, though it has not fully denied informal contacts, according to some reports. Furthermore, Trump described Cuba's economy as running on fumes with no energy or money and cited long-standing humanitarian concerns. The suggestion of a takeover, even if friendly, marks a sharp shift in rhetoric given decades of tense US-Cuba relations and raises questions about Washington's broader strategy in the Western Hemisphere. Let's take a listen in to Donald Trump's statements on Cuba.
Well, Marco Rubio is doing a great job. I think he's going to go down as the greatest Secretary of State in history. Look at what we've done as a presidency. Look at what we've done as an administration. They trust Marco, and so do the American people trust. He's been successful no matter where he's been. He also speaks the language, which is always nice and always helpful. But he's dealing, and it may be a friendly takeover. It may not be a friendly takeover. It wouldn't matter because they're down to, as they say, fumes. They have no energy. They have no money. They're in deep trouble on a humanitarian basis. And we don't want to see that, but they were very, very bad to a lot of people, as you know, and a lot of people living the Cuban-American vote, which I got at record levels. Very important. Those people are very important to me. I know what they went through. They went through hell. Some of them have gone on to be some of the most successful people in the country. Cuban-American business people, some of them are like the most successful in the country. And a lot of them are friends of mine because I've been fighting this battle with them for a long time. The Castro regime was brutal, but they lived off Venezuela. Now they don't live off Venezuela. Sends them no energy, no fuel, no oil, no money, no nothing. They lived without Venezuela. They couldn't have made it. And we cut them off from everything else. So, they're going to make either a deal or we'll do it just as easy anyway.
The United States president's there with his statements on Cuba. We finalise this hour with updates coming from the Korean Peninsula, where Pyongyang's leader, Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, has said that US-South Korea military drills that began this week would harm regional stability. Kim Yo-jong has also said that the annual Freedom Shield military exercises revealed the allies' hostile policy towards North Korea and will further destroy regional stability. She has added that the military display conducted near and around the sphere of their national sovereignty and security could lead to consequences too dreadful to imagine, as South Korea must not attempt to test North Korea's patience, resolve, or its capabilities. The North Korean Supreme Leader's sisters their statements. Well, that is all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. You are watching Trending Tech on NewsX World, where we bring you the latest tech breakthroughs and trends from around the globe. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a tech buzzword. It's reshaping the world around us every single day. From the way we shop online to how hospitals diagnose diseases, AI and machine learning are quietly running behind the scenes. Most of us interact with it without even realizing. Recommendation systems, voice assistants, fraud detection, and smart traffic management are just a few examples. Across industries like healthcare, finance, and logistics, AI is helping companies make faster, smarter decisions and boost efficiency. In classrooms, it's changing how students learn and how teachers teach, while businesses face both the challenge and opportunity of job transformation. AI could redefine daily life in ways we haven't fully imagined yet. Today, we take a closer look at where AI is making the biggest impact. To discuss all this and more, joining us now is Mehdi Samayegans. He is a lecturer at Taylor's University, the School of Computer Science. He holds a PhD in artificial intelligence. Thank you very much for joining us, Mehdi. It's a pleasure to have you here on the program. Let's get straight into this conversation. Artificial intelligence is everywhere in headlines, but in practical terms, where are we seeing AI and machine learning making the biggest real-world impact today?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about artificial intelligence. It's a topic that is shaping our world faster than ever before. So regarding to your question, artificial intelligence is already part of our daily lives, even if people don't always notice it. Today, the biggest real-world impact of AI is happening actually in three main areas, like healthcare, finance, and intelligence system behind the digital platforms. For example, in healthcare, AI help doctors detect diseases earlier and more accuracy. For example, AI can analyze the medical images like X-ray or a heart scan and identify patterns that are difficult for the human eye to see. In finance, also AI used for fraud detection and also, for example, risk analysis. Every time you make a digital payment, machine learning systems are working in the background to check if the transaction looks suspicious. So this increases the security and also protects millions of users. And also in everyday digital platform like recommendation systems, Netflix, for example, AI decide what video you see, what products are suggested to you, and even which news appears in your feed. So these systems learn from users' behavior actually and continuously improve. So the real impact of AI is not just in headline, it's already quietly improving decision making, efficiency and accuracy across industry. So we are not talking about the future, we are talking about the present.
Many people interact with AI daily without realizing it in 2026. From recommendation systems to voice assistants, which everyday AI applications do you think people most underestimate?
For example, in healthcare, AI help doctors detect diseases earlier and more accuracy. For example, AI can analyze the medical images like X-ray or heart scan and identify patterns that are difficult for the human eye to see. I believe the most underestimated AI applications are the ones people use every single day without thinking about them. First is the recommendation systems. When you, for example, open Netflix, YouTube, or even online shopping application, the content you see is not random. AI studies your behavior, what you click, what you watch, and how long you stay, and then predicts what you might like next. Many people think it's just a simple filter, but in the reality, it is the advanced machine learning working in real time. And navigation applications like, for example, Google Map, people think it just shows directions, but AI is constantly analyzing live traffic data and also driver behavior and road conditions to calculate the faster route. So that requires continuous prediction and optimization. The goal of machine learning is the prediction and optimization. For example, spam filters in email, most people never think about them, but AI is silently protecting us every day by detecting suspicious pattern and blocking harmful message before we even see them. And finally, for example, voice assistants. When you speak to your phone, AI converts speech to text and understands your intention and generates a meaningful response within a second. So that process is very complex, but it feels simple to the user. And the most powerful AI systems are often invisible. When technology works so smoothly that people don't notice it, that is when it is truly successful.
Across sectors like healthcare, finance, and logistics, how is machine learning transforming decision making and efficiency on the ground, not just in theory?
Yeah, that's a very great question because many people still think of AI so as a something theoretical or but in reality, machine learning is already transforming the decision making in real world industries. For example, let's talk healthcare as an example. Hospitals now use AI to predict patients' risk, like the chance of heart attack or infection. So these systems learn from thousands of past cases and give doctors real-time support in making better and faster decisions. So it's not just theory, it's saving lives today. In finance, also machine learning helps banks detect fraud in a second. And it also supports smarter investment decision by analyzing massive amounts of market data much faster than any human team could do. And in logistic and supply chain, AI also predicts demand and tracks delivery times and even plans roads for delivery trucks to avoid traffic and reduce fuel costs. So this led to faster deliveries and lower costs, especially for global companies. What is exciting is that these AI systems are not replacing people. They are helping humans make better decisions based on more data and also better prediction. That's where the true power of AI lies, not in replacing us, but in supporting us. But to be honest, AI will take some of the jobs, but the goal is helping human make better decisions.
As a lecturer in computer science, how are you seeing AI tools reshape the classroom, both in how students learn and how educators teach?
Yeah, as a lecturer in computer science, I can clearly see that AI is reshaping the classroom in two major ways: how students learn and how educators teach. First, from the student side, AI tools give students instant feedback. If they are learning programming, for example, AI can help them debug the code and explain errors and suggest improvement in real time. So this makes learning more interactive and personalized. Students no longer have to wait days for feedback. They can learn faster and correct mistakes immediately. AI also support different learning speed. So students need more examples, others want deeper challenges. And AI system can adapt to these needs, which make education more flexible. And also from the educators side, AI help us design better materials and analyze students' performance. We can quickly identify which topic students struggle and with and adjust our teaching strategy. It also reduce repetitive tasks like grading simple quizzes, so we can focus more on mentoring and critical thinking. But there is also responsibility. We must teach students how to use AI ethically. It's very important. Not just copy answers, but I understand the concepts. So overall, AI is not mm, replacing the teachers. It's becoming a powerful assistant in the classroom and making learning smarter, faster, and more personalized.
And there's a growing debate about AI replacing jobs. From your perspective, are we seeing more job displacement or job transformation? And which industries should be preparing the fastest?
That is a very interesting question and also a very important one. I believe AI will replace some jobs. We should be honest about that. Automation has always replaced certain types of work throughout the history, and AI is very powerful form of automation. But I don't think the full story is job disappearance. I think it's mainly job transformation. The key difference will be this. For example, people who learn how to work with AI, especially those who know how to ask the right questions and use AI tools effectively. So we keep their value in the job market. So those who ignore it may struggle. For example, recently I saw a video of a truck driver in Turkey who went to sleep at night while his autonomous truck drove the entire road. And in the morning, he woke up very happy. But honestly, if I were in his position, I would not feel comfortable because if the truck can drive by itself at night, then in the future, it may not need the driver at all. So yes, some jobs, especially repetitive and predictable ones, are at high risk. But at the same time, AI is creating entirely new jobs that don't didn't exist 10 years ago. AI engineers, prompt engineers, data scientists, AI ethics, AI trainers. So this pattern has happened before during the industrial revolution and also the digital revolution. So industries that should prepare fastest are transportation and manufacturing, customer service, and even parts of the media and finance. Because automation is moving very quickly there. In the end, AI will not simply remove jobs. It will change the definition of many jobs. So the real competition will not between humans and AI. It will between humans who use AI and humans who don't. This is my idea.
And what developments in machine learning, such as generative AI, reinforcement learning, or edge AI, do you believe will have the greatest real world impact over the next 5 or so years?
That for us is very important and strategic questions. Over the next 5 years, I believe three areas will have the greatest real world impact, like generative AI, reinforcement learning, and edge AI, but in different ways. First, generative AI will continue to transform knowledge work. It is already helping with writing, coding, design, customer support, and content creation. In the near future, it will become more specialized in supporting doctors, lawyers, engineers, and also researchers with high-level tasks. So its the biggest impact will be in productivity and creativity. Reinforcement learning also will quietly power intelligent decision system. It is especially important in robotics, autonomous vehicles, energy optimization, and also a smart infrastructure. Reinforcement learning allows actually machines to learn by interacting with environments and improving those experience. So in complex dynamic systems like traffic control or power grids, this will be extremely valuable. And edge AI may become one of the most transformative developments. Instead of sending all data to the cloud, AI models will run directly on device, like smartphone cameras, medical equipments, drones, something like this. So this means faster decisions and lower latency and better privacy and more reliability. For industries like healthcare, manufacturing, and transportation, this is very important and critical. If I had to choose one area with the broadest impact, I would say generative AI will change how people work, while edge AI and reinforcement learning will change how systems operate. So the next 5 years will not just be about smarter models, they will be about smarter integration of AI into everyday lives and also infrastructure.
And now looking ahead, what's the next big breakthrough in artificial intelligence that the public isn't talking about yet, but should be?
That also is a really good question. I think the next big breakthrough in AI, which the public is not talking about enough, is AI systems that can reason and plan and collaborate more like humans, not just generate content. Right now, most people focus on chatbots and image generation, but the next stage is AI that can break down complex problems into steps and evaluate different strategies and make long-term decisions. For example, imagine AI system that can manage an entire energy grid efficiently and coordinate disaster response in real world or assist scientific research by designing and testing hypotheses. So these systems will not just answer questions, they will think those processes. It's very important. And another major breakthrough will be trustworthy and explainable AI. As AI becomes more powerful, society will demand systems that are transparent, fair, and also accountable. So building AI that can explain why it made a decision, especially, for example, in healthcare or finance, will be critical. So the real breakthrough will not just be more powerful AI, it will be more reliable, more responsible, and more capable of structured reasoning. It's very important. So that is where the future impact will truly expand, not only in technology, but in society as a whole.
Stay tuned on NewsX World.
The physics was known for quite a while, and so that I think it hasn't really changed our understanding the quantum world work.
Job with the James Webb Space Telescope was to look as far back in time as we could to see the universe as it was young.
Changing the basic attitude about what education is for and what it needs to be.
Biology, medical studies, they make great progress.
Hello and welcome to Deep Dive on NewsX World. I'm Ruby Barlow. Today we unpack the paper trail behind the powder keg as the Trump administration pushes a maximum pressure campaign into a full-scale regional war. Washington is bypassing its own checks and balances to keep the front lines armed. From the desk of Secretary Marco Rubio to the factories of Texas, an emergency has been declared, not just on the battlefield, but in the halls of Congress. While European allies back away from the brink, the US is doubling down, fast-tracking thousands of bombs as the Iranian leadership crumbles and the casualty count soars. So the big question is this emergency sale a sign of strategic necessity, or is it a desperate bypass for a war that is spiraling out of diplomatic control? The tools of destruction are being fast-tracked. On Friday, the US State Department approved a $151.8 million sale of munitions to Israel, conveniently wiping away the requirement for congressional review. Secretary of State Marco Rubio invoked emergency powers to ensure the immediate delivery of 12,000 Blue 110A/B general purpose, 1,000-pound bomb bodies. The contractor, Repcon USA, operating out of Texas. This announcement comes just 1 week after the US and Israel coordinated their initial assault on Iran, a campaign that has already systematically dismantled the Iranian hierarchy, including the reported death of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. However, the emergency label isn't sitting well with everyone on Capitol Hill. Democratic Representative Gregory Meeks has scathingly labeled this an emergency of the Trump administration's own creation. The Trump administration has repeatedly insisted it was fully prepared for this war, Meeks stated. Rushing to invoke emergency authority to circumvent Congress tells a different story. Critics argue that bypassing oversight suggests the Pentagon's stockpiles are replenishing faster than the strategy is evolving. While the Trump administration has used this tactic before, as did the Biden administration during previous conflicts, the stakes in Iran are unprecedented. The human cost of this emergency is staggering. Iran's UN ambassador reports that at least 1,332 Iranian civilians have been killed in the last 7 days alone, with thousands more wounded. The blowback has been swift. 6 US service members were killed in a strike on a facility in Kuwait, and at least 10 civilians have died across Israel due to Iranian retaliation. As the US ships 12,000 more bombs, international rights experts are reigniting the debate over genocide assessments and the legality of total war, especially given the devastation already witnessed in Gaza and Lebanon. While Chancellor Friedrich Merz navigates Trump's trade threats and Emmanuel Macron deploys the Charles de Gaulle to assert European autonomy, Washington remains locked in a gauntlet of its own making. The US is proving it has the ordnance to break regimes, but as allies retreat and domestic critics grow louder, the question is no longer just about who wins the war, it's about who is left to help clean up the fallout. Now joining us live, we have Dan Perry, an international affairs expert in Tel Aviv. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. First question to you. The Trump administration has bypassed Congress to rush 12,000 bomb bodies to Israel, citing an emergency. Does this move reflect a genuine critical shortage in IDF stockpiles due to the intensity of the Iran campaign? Or is it a calculated political maneuver to lock in US support before domestic and international pressure for a ceasefire becomes untenable?
It could be neither. It could be both. We don't know if Israel really is running short of munitions, and I rather doubt it. In any case, they don't make that information public, and anything they say in public is not credible. So I would answer your question in the simplest manner. It is quite clear that Israel and the US are at this point operating in concert, in lockstep, in a complete and total alliance. And any weapons given to Israel is analogous to weapons given to US troops. In other words, they are pooling their resources and ensuring that they have whatever is needed to carry this out, or at least to threaten to carry this out into the mid and long term. It's, I think, as simple as that.
Now to Iran, the targeted killing of Ayatollah Khamenei and the top IRGC leadership was clearly the intended knockout blow for Operation Shield of Judah. However, with Iranian state media confirming a transitional council is already in place, is there a concern in Jerusalem that you have created a martyr effect that will unite the Iranian people rather than trigger the popular uprising the Trump administration is banking on?
In principle, assassinating other countries' leaders is obviously extrajudicial, generally unwise, and a dangerous precedent. They can then go and try to assassinate your own. That said, I believe that Israel and the US, with support of much of the world, believe what you have here is a singularity, where the regime in Iran was completely illegitimate, not only because of its aggression towards the region and perhaps beyond the region, but also its barbaric abuse of its own population, culminating in the massacre of what appear to be tens of thousands of people just 2 months ago. Look, it would be unwise to not be concerned that killing the Ayatollah might create a martyr, and certainly it would, among some elements of the population. I would argue a minority of the population, but sure, that could be the effect. That said, I don't think the assessment in Israel, in the US, or in the West in general is that a majority of Iranians are going to unite behind the regime because they perceive this to be an outrage. The majority of Iranians are desperately desirous of being rid of the regime. By some estimates, between 80 and 90% of Iranians strongly oppose the regime. And many Iranians, for sure, are happy to see this action finally undertaken against the regime with a clear aim of at least attempting to bring it down, and are only regretful that it took decades and indeed almost a half century. I think when you have a regime that's this detested by its population, and rightly so, it becomes unlikely that it could successfully deploy the usual stratagem of authoritarian governments whereby they attempt to portray an attack on themselves and the regime as being an attack on the nation. It might work. There have been precedents in history where versions of it have worked. But I think the Islamic Republic, the theocratic dictatorship established in Iran, has so overplayed its hand, has been so cruel to its own population that, frankly, it would be an insult to human intelligence to assume that they could so easily transform this situation to some domestic political advantage.
Now to the market. Oil prices have surged to a 14-month high following the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
What we can do as
Hello and welcome. I'm Rashan Gidwani and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines for this hour. Iran's Revolutionary Guards say they will not allow 1 liter of oil to be shipped from the Middle East if U.S. and Israeli attacks continue. President Donald Trump responds, saying that the U.S. would hit Iran much harder if it blocked exports from the vital energy-producing region. U.S. President Donald Trump is considering easing oil sanctions on Russia and releasing emergency crude stockpiles as part of a package aimed at decreasing global oil prices amid the Iran conflict. The deliberations reflect White House worries that the surge in oil prices will affect Republican chances in the midterms. Iraq has deployed additional troops along its border with Iran as tensions from the war spread into the region. Authorities say the move is aimed at preventing the frontier from becoming a new front line. Israel and Hezbollah have continued exchanging fire along the Lebanon border as the war spreads. Local authorities say the death toll from Israeli attacks in Lebanon has now surpassed 486 people. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham has urged America's Gulf allies to take a more active role in the war with Iran. He criticized partners including Saudi Arabia and the UAE for not joining military operations. Saudi Arabia has condemned an attack on the UAE consulate in Iraq's Kurdistan region. The kingdom says targeting diplomatic buildings is a clear violation of international law. Australian police extracts 5 Iranian women soccer players from the team's hotel before they were granted asylum. The 5 players, including team captain Zara Ganbari, sought protection after the team were branded wartime traitors for refusing to sing their national anthem before an Asian Cup match. Stock markets across the Asia-Pacific region have surged after oil prices retreated from recent highs. The gains follow sharp losses a day earlier as energy markets reacted to disruptions around the Strait of Hormuz. And here are the top stories for this hour. Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi has called the U.S.-Israel war on Iran a failure. He said Plan A failed and all subsequent plans by Washington and Tel Aviv have also failed. Araghchi accused the U.S. and Israel of launching indiscriminate attacks on residential areas without a clear endgame. He added that strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure have caused global oil prices to surge. The Iranian minister also ruled out any talks or negotiations with the United States, citing a very bitter experience in previous nuclear discussions. Araghchi said past promises of peaceful resolutions were broken when the U.S. chose to attack, leaving Tehran unwilling to engage diplomatically again. And now joining us live is Gedalia Bloom, Middle East Affairs analyst. She's joining us from Eli in Israel. Hi, sir. So do you believe that the relations now are entirely terminated? Is there any hope whatsoever of any diplomatic relations between the U.S., Israel, and Iran? Please.
I mean, I'll tell you, that's the question should be, are there any possible diplomatic relations in the future between Iran and the other Arab Gulf states? And I think they completely flipped the table on any kind of diplomatic possibilities. They flipped the table way before this war. They flipped the table when they were enriching uranium up to 60%, which they were apparently, according to Witkoff, had said in the negotiations, they were bragging that they were able to develop 11 nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs from that enriched uranium, in which is still, I think the IAEA just today came out and saying that it's still missing and the Iranian regime is hiding it. So this whole progression of whether or not there's going to be any diplomatic relations between Iran, Israel, or the United States right now, I think that's kind of a question of, I think that's I think we're way past that. I think that throughout the whole diplomatic mission with Iran, whether it be with the European Union, whether it be through America, whether it be through whoever, diplomacy has only been used as a delay tactic for the Iranian regime in order to further their nuclear ambitions, to create a shield so they could continue to solidify their place as an oppressive regime in the Middle East.
I've essentially been listening to reports of how the U.S. has created a unipolar world and they've weaponized diplomacy in the sense that it's just like you mentioned, we're way past the stage of these nations essentially sitting down at a table and having talks about how to further their interests cooperatively. To what extent do you agree or disagree, or how much can you speak on that, please?
I mean, I'll say this, diplomacy is when you can get two people at the table who have some sort of shared goal. That's the only way diplomacy works. If there could be some sort of some point of agreement. There has never been any points of agreement with the Iranian regime and what their aspirations are. So I think at this point right now, I think that we are facing a real point in history, whether or not at the Iranian regime's weakest that it's ever been in the last 40 plus years, are we going to continue to push until, by the way, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just said recently, just in the last half hour, is that it's now time for the Iranian people to make a decision, because there's no way that there's going to be boots on the ground in Iran. There's not the regime change is not a military goal, but it is, of course, a goal for everybody, because we know that once the Iranian regime is not in power anymore, and whoever replaces them, hopefully will create more of a free Iranian state. We don't have to worry about the nuclear program. We don't have to worry about the ballistic missile program. We don't have to worry about Iran funneling billions of dollars to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to Hamas. And so I think at this point right now, I don't think diplomacy is even a word that we should be discussing right now. I think what we should be discussing right now is whether or not the Iranian people themselves are going to answer the call from the U.S., from Israel, to say, listen, we've already degraded the IRGC. We've cut off the head of the regime. Now is your time in history. Are you going to hit the streets in the millions and take over the institutions that rightfully belong to you in the first place?
Please stay with us, sir. We'll be right back with you. Next up, a U.S. Patriot air defense system is being deployed to southeastern Turkey following the detection of 2 Iranian ballistic missiles heading toward Turkish territory. This strategic move to Malatya province is being coordinated with NATO to bolster the region's shield against escalating threats from the ongoing Iran war. Furthermore, the deployment is being centered near the Korechik radar base, a critical facility for monitoring long-range missile launches. Meanwhile, Ankara has issued a stern warning to Tehran against further provocations, even as Iran maintains that its regional neighbors are not being targeted. However, Turkey's reliance on NATO assets is being highlighted